Most veterans who get denied for PTSD don't get denied because they don't have PTSD. They get denied because they made one of 5 preventable mistakes. I have reviewed thousands of PTSD claims as a C&P examiner, as a physician, and now working with veterans at Xterra Health. And I see the same mistakes over and over again. Veterans with legitimate PTSD, real trauma, real symptoms getting denied or lowballed because of paperwork issues, missing evidence, or misunderstanding how the VA actually evaluates these claims. PTSD is one of the most commonly claimed conditions at the VA and one of the most commonly denied on initial filing. Estimates suggest that roughly 30% of initial PTSD claims are denied, often for reasons that could have been avoided. That denial doesn't just delay your benefits, it can add months or years to your claim. It can affect your back pay, and it can make you feel like the system is rigged against you. Well, today I'm going to tell you the 5 biggest mistakes veterans make on PTSD claims and exactly how to avoid each one. These aren't theoretical. These are the mistakes I see sink every claim every week. I am Dr. Marshall Bahr, an actual doctor, an Army Ranger, and a former C&P examiner. I have been on both sides of the table. I know what gets claims approved and what gets them denied. So let's fix your claim before you even begin to file it. So let's get into the mistakes. So mistake number 1 is filing without documented proof of your stressor. Now, to get service connection for PTSD, you need 3 things, and you have to have these 3 things. 1, a current diagnosis of PTSD. 2, a stressor event that happened during service. And 3, a medical opinion or a nexus connecting your PTSD to that stressor. Most veterans focus on the diagnosis. I mean, they have PTSD. That's the obvious one to them. But what sinks the claim is the stressor, because the VA won't just take your word for it. The VA, they need evidence that your stressor actually happened. And different types of stressors require different types of evidence. So combat stressors are probably the easiest ones, right? So if your DD-214 shows you were in a combat zone, received a combat action badge or a combat infantry badge, or have documented hostile fire or imminent danger pay, the VA will generally concede your stressor. They're not going to ask you to prove that bad things happened in a war zone. Now, non-combat stressors are a little harder. If your PTSD comes from a training accident, witnessing a death, a vehicle accident, or something that happened stateside, you need corroborating evidence, military records, incident reports, buddy statements from people who were there with you. Next is military sexual trauma, and it has actually special evidentiary rules because it's kind of unique. The VA actually recognizes that MST is often unreported. So they'll look at markers in your record, things like sudden drops in performance, requests to transfer out of your unit, changes in your behavior, mental health visits that started around the time of the incident. So what is the fix for all this? Well, before you file, ask yourself, really ask yourself, what evidence do I have that my stressor actually happened? Do I have a DD-214 with combat indicators? Do I have deployment records to hostile areas, incident reports of police reports, buddy statements from fellow service members? Do I have my personal statement written describing exactly what happened, when, and where? Because if you can't prove the stressor and that it happened, the VA can't connect your PTSD to service. It doesn't matter how severe your symptoms are. So the second mistake I see is using the wrong forms or forgetting critical forms. I know, nobody wants to hear about paperwork, but wrong paperwork in the system of the VA is one of the fastest ways to get your claims delayed or denied. So for an initial PTSD claim, you need to have VA Form 21-526EZ. This is your main disability claim form. You need to have VA Form 21-0781, Statement in Support of Claim for PTSD. This is where you describe your stressor in detail, your personal statement. And then VA Form 21-0781A. So if your PTSD is related to military sexual trauma, you need to use this form instead. Now, the mistake I see constantly, veterans file the 21-526EZ and check the box for PTSD, but then they don't submit the 21-0781. So the VA has no details about their stressor. The claim gets delayed while they request more information, or worse, denied for insufficient evidence. So if you've already been denied, or you got a rating lower than you deserve, get a VA form 20-0995. It is the supplemental claim form. Use this when you have new evidence that wasn't in your original claim. Or you could do VA form 20-0996, which is a higher level review. You would use this when you think the VA made an error on the evidence they already had. The key is don't file a higher level review when you should be filing a supplemental claim. A higher level review, or HLR, won't consider any new evidence. If your claim failed because you didn't have enough evidence, you need a supplemental claim with new evidence, like a nexus letter or updated medical records. So here's the fix. Before you submit, just double check. Did I use the right form for my situation? Did I include the form where I describe my stressor? Did I attach all the supporting documents? Did I answer every question, even if the answer is NA non-applicable? Paperwork is not exciting. No one likes it, but it's the difference between a claim that moves forward and one that sits in limbo or gets denied. Now, if you're filing for PTSD or you've been denied and you're trying to figure out your next move, hit subscribe right now, because I'm about to tell you the mistakes that cost veterans the most money. Mistake number 3 is one most veterans don't even realize they're making. So mistake number 3 is thinking you need to have every symptom listed in the rating criteria. Veterans look at the VA's PTSD rating criteria and they see a long list of symptoms for each rating level. And then they start to think, oh man, I don't have all of those symptoms, so I might not qualify for that rating. Well, that's not how it works. The VA rates PTSD under CFR 38, the general rating formula for mental disorders. There are 5 rating levels, 0, 10, 30, 50, 70, all the way to 100% rating. Each rating level hits and lists example symptoms, not required symptoms. The regulation literally says these symptoms are such as or like, meaning they're illustrations, not just checklists. So what the VA is actually measuring is your overall level of occupational and social impairment. Like, how does your PTSD affect your ability to work? How does it affect your relationships? How does it affect your daily functioning? So here's an example. Let's say the 70% criteria mentions suicidal ideation, but you don't have suicidal thoughts. You do have severe anxiety, panic attacks, inability to maintain relationships, and difficulty keeping a job. You can still get a 70% rating. Your symptoms don't have to match the list exactly. They have to show that your level of impairment matches that rating level. So here's the fix. When you describe your PTSD symptoms on forms or to your medical provider or at your C&P exam, focus on impairment, not just your symptoms. Don't just say, I have nightmares. Say, I have nightmares 3 to 4 times a week and they wake me up. I can't get back to sleep and I'm exhausted at work the next day. I've actually gotten written up twice for falling asleep at the job. You need to connect your symptoms to how they impair your life. That's what determines your rating. All right, so the 4th mistake, relying only on your C&P exam to tell your story. Here's what happens all the time. A veteran files for PTSD. They get scheduled for a C&P exam. They show up, answer questions for 30 to 60 minutes, and then they wait. And when the rating comes back lower than expected, they're shocked. But I told the examiner everything. Listen, as a former C&P examiner myself, let me tell you the truth. The exam is a snapshot in time. It's one conversation on one day. And some examiners are better than others. Some exams are thorough. Some are rushed. Some examiners understand PTSD deeply, and some are just checking boxes so they can go to lunch. Your C&P exam should not be the only evidence supporting your claim. You should be building your case before that C&P exam. So what are some things you could include? Well, a nexus letter from a private physician or medical provider, like a PA or nurse practitioner. So a medical provider who's actually spent time with you, reviewed your records, and can write a detailed opinion connecting your PTSD to your service. You could bring a completed DBQ, a disability benefits questionnaire filled out by a provider documenting your symptoms in the VA's own format. You could also submit lay statements, which are letters from, say, your spouse, family members, even coworkers, people who can describe how your PTSD affects you in daily life. They see things you might not even notice anymore. And you should also include every time your own personal statement, a detailed written account of your stressor, your symptoms, and how your PT has affected your work, relationships, and overall quality of life. So let me give you an example. I'm going to talk about two veterans with similar PTSD. So the first veteran shows up to the C&P exam with nothing but his VA medical records, his blue button, right? The exam goes fine. He describes his symptoms, but the C&P examiner writes a report that makes his PTSD sound moderate, so he ends up with a 50% rating. Now, the second veteran shows up with a next letter already submitted from a medical provider, a completed DBQ documenting severe symptoms, 3 lay statements from family members describing his rage episodes and isolation, and a 4-page personal statement written by the veteran himself. He had the same symptoms. Second veteran got 70% though. Why? Because he didn't rely on a 45-minute exam to tell his whole story. He brought the evidence with him by submitting it before the exam. So here's the fix. You need to build your case before your C&P exam. And then you can bring that supporting evidence to your appointment. Or better yet, that you just need to submit it with your claim so the examiner already has it. The C&P exam is extremely important, but it's not the only voice in the room that day. So make sure your evidence speaks the loudest volume. Now, the fifth mistake I see, giving up after a denial or not understanding your appeal options. I get it. You filed a claim. You waited months. You got denied. And it feels personal. It feels like the VA is saying your trauma doesn't really matter to us. But a denial is not the end. It's often just the beginning of then getting it right. When you get a decision letter that you may disagree with, you've got 3 appeal options, and each one serves a different purpose. So let me run through them. So the first one is a supplemental claim. So you'd use this when you have new and relevant evidence that wasn't in your original claim packet. So new evidence might be a nexus letter you didn't have before, updated medical records showing worsening symptoms, buddy statements you've gathered, or now maybe you got a new DBQ. So if your claim failed because of missing evidence, this would be your lane for an appeal. Now, option 2 is what we call a higher level review, HLR. So you use this when you think the VA made an error based on evidence they already had. So what it does when you ask for it, it causes a senior rater to review your file. They don't look at new evidence. They can only look at whether the original decision was correct based on what was submitted. So if you think you had strong evidence, but the rating doesn't make sense, if it seems like they ignored something or misapplied the rules, this is your lane for an appeal. Now, the third option, and it's the big gun, is Board of Veteran Appeals. This is the formal appeals process, and you can request a direct review, submit new evidence, or request a hearing with a veterans law judge. Now, just for full disclosure, this does take longer, but can be powerful for your complex cases. You also have the right to an attorney to represent you at this level. So here's the fix for all this. Before you appeal, you just need to ask yourself, why was I denied? Was it because I was missing evidence? Then do a supplemental claim. Was it because the VA made an error? Then you would ask for a higher level review. Was it because I had a complex case or multiple issues? Then consider the Board of Appeals. Don't just pick randomly. Pick the lane that matches your situation, and then don't give up. Now, let me be fair about a few things, okay? So a couple points here. Point number 1 is some denials, they are correct. If you don't have a PTSD diagnosis, or your stressor can't be verified, or there's no connection to service, the VA may be right to deny you. The goal isn't to game the system. It's to present your legitimate claim correctly. Now, the second point is the VA, please understand, they are not your enemy. Most raters are just trying to do their best with the evidence they have. Your job is to give them the evidence they need to say yes. The third point I have is even when you do everything right, some claims just take time. So don't get discouraged by the timeline. Just focus on building the strongest case possible. I mean, this is the principle of it all. These 5 mistakes, they are all fixable, and fixing them puts you in the best position to get the rating you have earned. So let's recap all 5 mistakes, all right? So mistake number 1, filing without documented proof of your stressor. Just know what evidence you need for your type of stressor and gather it before you file. Mistake 2, wrong forms or missing forms. Use the right form, use the right appeal form for your situation. Mistake 3 is thinking you need every symptom. Remember, the criteria are examples, not checklists. Focus on your overall impairment. Fourth mistake, relying only on that C&P exam. Build your case with nexus letters, DBQs, lay statements, and your personal statement. And the fifth mistake, giving up too early after a denial. Know your appeal options and pick the right lane to follow. If you're filing for PTSD and you want help avoiding these mistakes, that's exactly what I do and we do every day at Xterra Health. We provide nexus letters where we provide medical opinions connecting your PTSD to your documented stressor. We know what the VA looks for because we've been on that side of the table. We also offer a claims roadmap service where we review your evidence, identify the gaps you have, and help you build the strongest possible claim before you file. And we also offer a C&P exam prep where we prepare you to communicate your symptoms in terms of impairment, not just a list of what's wrong, but how it affects your daily life. If you're interested in any of these services, the link is in the description below. We'll look at your case and give you transparent, honest guidance. Now look, filing for PTSD can be difficult, not just logistically, but emotionally. You're being asked to document the worst things that have happened to you in your life. You're being asked to prove that you're struggling. You're being asked to justify trauma that you'd rather forget. But here's the thing. You've already survived the hard part. You survived what happened. Filing the claim is just paperwork, and paperwork that can be fixed. Don't let these 5 mistakes stand between you and the rating you've earned. Know the rules. Build the evidence. Tell your story the right way. The VA isn't going to chase you down to give you money, but they will give it to you when you show them the evidence. So let's show them. Now, speaking of getting what you're owed, let me tell you about something that might be hiding in your VA decision letter right now. So a recent 2026 federal court ruling just confirmed that veterans may be entitled to years of back pay based on how the VA assigned their effective dates. And most veterans don't even know to look for it. So watch my video on could your VA decision letter be hiding years of back pay? It could be worth tens of thousands of dollars. Now, I am Dr. Marshall Bahr, an Army Ranger, a Special Operations Combat Medic, an actual doctor, and a former C&P examiner. PTSD claims fail for preventable reasons. So let's just prevent them. I'll see you in the next video, and until next time, stay mission ready.